All right. This is long in the making,
Yeah,
getting our schedules together. But with me today is Byron Nash. This is actually going to be the first in our coaches profile. Every one of our coaches, we're pretty proud of the fact that like every one of our coaches was homegrown. You know, we've not ever monster.com'd and hired a coach. We brought our coaches from our own population, our own CrossFit Pittsburgh tribe. And, all we've ever looked for is someone who shows the interest and the aptitude and has been, an energetic part of our community. I think would be the best way to say it.
Yeah.
So, and I was thinking about this today or yesterday maybe. I'm thinking, man, how long have you been with us?
I think this is my 12th year.
12 years?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I kind of, the only thing I could think, and it's the way I described it to myself, I was like, all right, I can't remember when you weren't.
Yeah.
So, back to the Washington Boulevard days. Yeah. And, prior to that, our original location, we were there for, I think, only 2 or 3 years, I think, in the first spot. So really, the majority of our time, you've been
here. Yeah.
You've been with us. So, that's awesome. That's awesome. And I think one of the things that's kind of interesting because of the way, our coaches come to us, we don't have what we would consider except for Jennifer and I, any real full-time coaches. So everybody comes from a different background. Mm-hmm. And I think yours has always, fascinated me, professional musician, writer. And what I didn't know, and this is one of my favorite Byron stories, right? I had, and it wasn't out of, certainly not out of disrespect. I just had no understanding or comprehension of it. Yeah. We had, what was it, the Festivus Games maybe?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, and I said, hey, would you mind playing the national anthem? Well, one, I'm not a musician. So two, I have no idea on a scale of hard to easy where the national anthem would fall, right? Mm-hmm. And then I had to drop the bombshell on you, I think, and I was like, man, if you could do it like my all-time favorite version, if you could do it like Jimi Hendrix, that would be cool.
Yeah, that's a tall order.
And you're like, when is this? And
like 2 days later.
And you're like, let me rehearse, which I completely understood that because no matter how comfortable I am with something, I'm not doing it cold.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, great, And I think it was only after you did it, after you performed it, then you were like, whew. Mm-hmm. You're like, I got to tell you, that's hard. Then you let me know how hard it was, and I'm like, ooh. Then I felt bad.
No,
then I felt bad, but I was like, man, it was
a good challenge.
It was awesome. It really was awesome. I know somewhere in our archives we still have that video. Yeah. So that was very, very cool. But also I was fascinated when you told me that you don't read music.
No, I don't.
Like
Not
that.
one bit.
That for me.
All year.
Tell me about that a little bit. What drew you to it? Obviously your love for it, but to me that's absolutely fascinating that you have that kind of you can hear it or picture it and then make it happen.
I grew up around a lot of music. My mom had a really diverse music collection. I was obsessed really young. It's really vivid. 5 years old, looking at P-Funk records and old soul records and just being fascinated with all of that stuff. There was no sense of genre to me. Mm-hmm. I was listening to, what was it, Rhinestone Cowboy?
Oh, yeah.
Sure. That song was great to me, but so was Barry Manilow, and so was funk music. And that just continued. And then I didn't really get into guitar until in my, kind of mid-late teens. I was a late bloomer, and then in my 20s, I'm like, all right, I'm going to play guitar the rest of my life, whether I play in front of anyone or not. Mm-hmm. And it just became, a life obsession.
Yeah.
And I just listened to a lot of things. So that kind of, as you memorize a song,
right,
you just kind of tinker around and try to figure it out. And that's just how I taught myself.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. No, that's, again, you know me long enough and I think well enough to know that, and I try to keep myself in check because I can go on tangents, but I will finally circle back around. I don't do that. But one of the things that I've noticed, and I think this is what, I'm kind of hearing now, and I get it. You draw inspiration from everywhere. There's no one this type or this genre,
No.
right? And what's interesting to me is how you take something like that, but then make it something your own, and then it's a different work.
Yeah.
You know,
It was almost a shortcoming of not being able to read. So I would hear something and I'd maybe play along with it and try to figure it out, but also put my own spin on it. And it was just a way that it made it fun.
right?
And then over time, you know, I remember my grandmother, I was in Albuquerque, and I would learn all these like snippets of a Metallica riff or whatever, but never the whole song. I couldn't get the whole thing together.
Right.
And she's like, play me a song. And like, I didn't know how to play a whole song. And that was sort of the starting point of, okay, I have to get better.
Yeah.
Whatever that takes, you know. And so it's just a lot of playing, just sitting there grinding it out until I'm like, okay, this sounds okay, you know.
Yeah.
And then over time getting better and putting myself in really uncomfortable situations where I'm terrified, kind of like that one. And that helps you level up more.
Yeah.
You kind of dial in. So, and I still do that now, you know.
Right.
I play like nursing homes. Those are nerve-wracking gigs. They're great, but I'm so nervous because it's like 10 people.
Yeah.
Versus like 2,000 people, I'm not really nervous.
Isn't that, you know what? God. And full disclaimer, my memory's not what it used to be.
Yeah.
It's not. You know, you get blown up a few times in a career, and you
That'd
tend to
change it, yeah.
you tend to forget things. But that to me is fascinating because Tara, we did Murph this past Memorial Day.
Yeah.
And I'm like, man, I didn't ask you early enough. I'm like, I'm not going to drop it on him again. And I know Tara had offered once. She was like, hey, I'll do it.
Yeah.
I'll sing it. And I was like, oh, awesome. Awesome. So this year I was like, hey, could you do it for us? And she was like, okay. And she did.
Oh, nice.
Have you ever heard her sing?
No, but I know she comes from a musical family.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
So first of all, that song, you know what I mean? Like maybe it's just in my blood, but
Yeah.
I can't hear that and not get emotional. Your version of it, nothing against Jimi Hendrix.
No.
It's probably like the Jedi of
Yeah.
guitar musicians, like the Mace Windu, like old school.
Yeah.
Your version, I was like, oh my God, this is it. Like this is what I had up here. This is how I knew it would be. She gets up there and sings. No accompaniment. And for a second, it was one of those like people are getting ready to go. We're getting queued up. It's getting ready to start. And I was about to say, I had been distracted for a moment. And I was about to say, hey, I've got a, what do you call it when there's no lyrics? Like
like instrumental.
Yeah. I said, I've got the instrumental ready to go. Would you like that? Before I could say a word, Jen's already like, all right, gentlemen, take off your headgear, your hats, whatever, face the, and boom, she starts. No accompaniment, silent as anything. And nothing for nothing. You know how tiny she is?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know why it surprised me. But all of a sudden, it starts out like easy and level. And then all of a sudden, it just starts to build. And the next thing you know, I'm like, oh my God, like amazing.
I didn't know that.
Absolutely amazing. So, that to me, and she said exactly what you just said, a little bit, paraphrasing, but I was like, Tara, that was awesome. I was like, I knew you could sing. I said, but I never, like, wow, And a little bit later, she shared that same thought. She was like, you know what? She's like, when she sang at a ball game, national anthem at a ball game, how many, I don't know, thousands of people. She's like, that was nothing compared to this.
Yeah.
And wouldn't you think, I mean, I guess to the novice, I think it's reversed.
Part of it, too, is that it's out of context. So you're singing in front of the people you train and work out with, and in this completely different space, and then all of a sudden, they don't know you that way. It's kind of like singing in front of strangers that you know.
Right.
It's like a little terrifying, and I felt the same thing. I play a gig. I know the audience. I know what it's like to be on stage. When I had to play in the gym, whoa.
Yeah.
Super nervous was just a different thing.
Yeah.
But the first time I was asked to do it was when my brother got his pins in the Air Force. And that was probably the most I was scared because I'm like, I'm not adding any flavor to this. I'm playing it as straight as possible out of respect. And I just right at the end put a little bit of like funk on it, And they were like, they thanked me and it went well. And they were like, we always hear everything so straight. And like, it was so nice to actually hear some vibe and emotion to it. I'm like, okay. And that helped me for when I did it for you guys.
Yeah. And you have to admit, I mean, if there's And I don't, you know what? You and I are roughly the same age.
Yeah.
And I think that's great because you understand. We understand. Like, no, didn't mean it like that.
Yeah.
But I swear to God, I don't know a more potentially controversial piece of music that one way or other is about to piss somebody off.
Exactly.
And it's a shame. It's an absolute shame because I tie that all back into this past Memorial Day. I was asked to give the speech to our local community. There's a parade through Verona and Oakmont, and then it culminates with a ceremony at the Veterans Cemetery in Oakmont. So I was asked to give the speech, and I'm sitting there and I'm thinking about it, and a whole lot of the thought process that went into it. I'm like, and I know I'm not the only one. I know I'm not. I'm like, is anyone else like actually choking on the irony nowadays that people are at each other's throats, arguing about, but whatever their point is, counterpoint, point, you're able to do so because of the country we live in.
Right.
And if you don't, I think no matter what side you're on, you got to appreciate that.
Yeah.
Because anywhere else in the world, almost anywhere else in the world, the things that you're able to do here, while you're spewing hatred to the very tenets and institution that allows you to do it.
Yeah.
You try that anywhere else, it would not go the way you think it would go, and we're certainly not, far from perfect, far from perfect. And you and I've talked about this before in all kinds of different contexts, but, we're far from perfect, but you don't, like the ideals, in my mind, I'll go to my grave. I don't think the ideals don't die.
Yeah.
Ideals die if everybody just turns their back on them. You want to get back on track, you got to make that happen.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's and similarly, like, and it's just my little 2 cents. When I was practicing, and I learned this, I know you do this. My wife put me onto it. She was like, "Are you practicing your speech?" And I'm like, "Honey, I'm not going to embarrass you. Yeah, I'm practicing it." And she was like, and again, out of the mouths of babes, right? She goes, "Are you doing it out loud?" And the first time she said that to me, I was like, well, I'm doing it out loud. I'm in a room by myself. Why would I do it out loud?
Yeah.
She was like, there's a difference.
There is.
There's a big difference. If you read it, it sounds the way it sounds in your head.
Yeah, but the energy changes once you're on stage and there's a mic and there's a crowd and you're trying to remember what you saw versus what,
exactly.
you said, it's just a different style of learning,
Yeah, for sure. So I thought that was kind of an interesting, put it out there, make it loud, do it, even if you're by yourself.
Yeah.
Even if you're by yourself, especially if you are, put it out loud and clear, but that's just always, to me, I think too, I know I told you this a couple years ago on a whim, because I do a lot of things like impulsive, right?
Yeah.
I'm driving home through Blawnox and I get the urge, I'm like, I am going to teach myself to play the guitar.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And I pull over, there's a little guitar shop there. I go in and I tell the guy right off, I'm like, listen, I know nothing about guitars, but I'd like an acoustic guitar, something, that I could develop with and learn how to play. Yeah, great. So I bought a Yamaha and, cool, right?
Yeah.
And I YouTubed it and I'm like, all right, I'm going to learn some basics and I'm going to learn. And I know I told you this. I was like, man, I had no idea how much this would hurt.
Yeah, it takes a while.
Like, it's painful.
That's the hump. You got to get over that physical part first.
I'm like, it's painful. But, again, I mean, I think that's the thing about music. You don't, I don't ever have to be stage ready.
Yeah.
I don't ever have to be able to open for you. Right. But I think that's, it's a personal thing. And I'm sure, it's your journey. It's your, profession. Right. I mean, at some point, if you didn't love it, you wouldn't have kept doing it.
Oh, no. I mean, I think I would still be playing guitar whether I played another show. The show is like a byproduct of it. But, if you were to walk into my house, you'd be like, it's either someone who's obsessed or a small music store. I started that long ago. A lot of my friends would come over like, how did you get all this stuff? I'm like, I've been building for years. So I knew that was sort of the path I was going to go just because I loved it that much.
Yeah. No, and I think, too, you don't have to have the same interest to understand it.
Yeah.
Right? Like a different modality,
Yeah.
but similar. And, it's funny, too, because, again, potential controversy, not even sure if we can say it on YouTube, but there are times when someone comes to me and they say, hey, like I did. I'm like, hey, Byron, I'm trying to learn guitar. You got any tips? You got any, when I was telling, I'm like, my fingers are killing me.
Yeah.
And you're like, you just have to keep doing it.
Yeah.
You have to keep doing it, and you build you'll get used to it. It's an adaptive process. Similarly, whenever someone is interested in like firearm safety, something like that, they'll ask me. And I'm like, no, I get you. But I'm also kind of, I don't know, maybe a little bit more leery than I would be if it was asking me about CrossFit or asking me about something else. Because I'm like, listen, I don't know. Maybe this guy's somebody I know, different story.
Yeah.
If it's somebody I casually know or a friend of, I mean, I don't know this person.
Yeah.
I don't know what their intent is. I don't know what their...
I don't want to give advice on that.
Yeah.
I don't know where you're
I don't know what their mindset is, But that aside, just as like a little disclaimer again, that aside, I think when you get to that point where you're like, well, can you take me out? Can you work with me? Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's the first question I get. Man, where'd you get all this stuff?
Yeah.
I'm like, you think I went out like one day and bought it all?
Yeah.
This is like years and
30 grand.
This is years and years of accumulation tools. Like if you were a musician or a carpenter or a painter, they're just tools. That's
tell
it.
People that say all the time, like
right.
Carpenter doesn't have one hammer.
Exactly.
You need these different things for different reasons, and the more you get into it, and the more professional you become, the more you kind of need. In a way,
right.
I wish that stopped a little bit. Financially, it's like I need this mic for this thing, but if you love it, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, exactly. You almost, not like in an irresponsible way, but you almost lose track.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe like they're like, I don't know, like favorite girlfriends or something like that. You always remember, that one was I bought that one in this time or did that in this time. But I think it almost, it's all part of the process, and you wouldn't trade it for anything. It's kind of neat. But I think too, and you probably get this all the time. Me personally, I love music, big fan of music. I've always believed nothing can evoke memory, excitement, passion, emotion, like music can. I think I read this somewhere where, like, psychologically speaking, the way we're wired, sounds being music and smells. Yeah. Two of the things that, like, something hits you and you're like, oh, it's like my grandmother's kitchen, I
remember my whole lifeline based off of what music I was listening to at the time and what was out. And I'm like, okay, I remember that. Like, 83 sounded like this and 89 sounded like that.
Yeah. Isn't that wild? I mean, almost to the note, Prince. I cannot hear a Prince song and not associate it with awesome memories. Yeah. Like Purple Rain, when that album came out, I remember exactly where I was, who I was hanging with at the time, When my wife and I met, honey, you'll remember this, Diamonds and Pearls. Yeah. I mean, that was the hot, Prince album at the time, and fantastic. But it's great too, because I think sometimes what it does, without even thinking about it, it cues you. And it's like, you want to talk about like endorphins firing. Yeah. Sometimes a song can elicit some of the most pleasant memories like that. It comes on the radio or you hear it on a playlist and you're boom, it takes you right back.
You're right back there.
Yeah. That is so cool. So cool. But so you came to us as a member. Yeah. As a member, started training and started training hard. I mean, as I remember, you were pretty much all in.
Yeah, it's funny because I had hand surgeries right at the beginning, so I was kind of at a deficit right out the gate. Like, there's certain things I just couldn't do, and then once like my hands healed, probably a year and a half in, then I was able to really start pushing myself and getting the things that come along with it.
Right. But one of the things that I recall, and it's interesting, I didn't forget about the hand surgery, but one of the things I recall now that you bring it up, and I thought this was cool, you didn't quit. And I don't mean this, excuse me, I don't mean this as a criticism to anyone else. I certainly don't. But I think That's one of the things I love most about the CrossFit community is it is highly adaptive.
Yeah.
It's not a sales pitch. That's not the purpose of this,
Sure.
but you've been around long.
Yeah.
You're a trainer. You're a coach. It's adaptive. We're just, before we started to record, you're talking about 2 clients and you're like, no, I mean, I specify, I get to the point where I design their workouts based on their lifestyle. What do they need to be better at? What do they need to be more capable of sustaining and endurance wise in this? And I think sometimes, and this is the difference between, I need to use this as a tool to make myself better as a musician, as a baker, as a contractor, whatever, as opposed to, hey man, did you hear about CrossFit? I'm going to try that. There's nothing wrong with trying it.
Yeah.
I get it. But I think sometimes too, it's like, hey, did you hear about that Peloton? I'm going to try that. Super. But then what? Does it work for you?
Yeah.
Do you stick with it? Because, I mean, we're, like I keep saying, we're roughly the same age. Still, you're just still like a little bit of a kid.
Yeah.
Compared to me. But we're in the same. we're in the same bracket. But sure. I think, it's inevitable. The older we get, I don't want to get all like dark and philosophical, but the older we get, the more you have to give up.
Yeah. I
mean, that's just how it is. That's part of life. And what I mean by that is like, okay, so, you never say never, but I'll tell you this, when we jumped in that next bracket, and I don't remember what the numbers were, but when we jumped in the next bracket, according to the CrossFit Open, and the 50-pound dumbbells went away and they were replaced by the 35s, I didn't mind.
Yeah.
I did not mind that.
You know what 50 is going to feel like. Right. Once you've gone through all these workouts, you kind of like, you just know what it's going to be no matter what shape you're in, whether you're a fire breather or you're brand new. But if you know that 50 pounds over the head, it's going to be rough. And where are you in your space, in your training of how do I get through that?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's one of the things too that I was impressed by, 12, 11, 10 years ago when you're like, I got to get some wrist surgery, a carpal tunnel. Yeah. And I'm like, well, no kidding. Right. I mean, like if you have a career that's going to lead to that, music certainly.
It's really bartending.
Is that really?
That's really where it came from.
Okay.
Yeah. You don't think about it, but the repetitive motion, let's say I work a 10-hour shift, I'm shaking, I'm washing glasses, I'm grabbing bottles off of a shelf that are full, and that's just a natural way, and then you're turning. So like if you held a 2-pound bottle like this, your wrist starts to hurt in like 3 seconds. But you don't think about that when you're cranking out drinks. I'd make 1,000+ drinks a night. Right. I worked 6 days a week, and I was training 5 days a week. So it kind of helped keep me in shape, like keep my hands in shape, but it really came from that.
Wow. I would see I would have never thought of that.
But it started when I started CrossFit, and I was like, oh no, I really like this. I thought it was because of CrossFit. Yeah. They were like, no, this was going to happen eventually anyway, but it was really from bartending. Yeah.
And see, like I said, that's the thing. I mean, I've always done this, always. And you may very well get this too. I've always considered myself a regular guy. Yeah. Literally. So I am. So what amazes me is, you and I compared notes quite a bit. And I do remember back to the old days at Harris's Grill, you would close, then you would roll in and train at 5:30.
I would come to the 9.
The 9, okay.
I was getting out at like 4:30. And even that was like rough because you're wired. The last part of your night, you're cleaning for an hour. So it's all physical. Right. And then maybe you have a beer or two to come down off of that. Sleep like crap, and then I'd roll into the gym. Yeah. But that was honestly the only thing that was keeping me. I don't think I could have just bartended. I would have fallen apart by now. Like if it weren't for CrossFit simultaneously, everyone thought I was crazy. They're like, I don't understand how you're going there doing that crazy stuff. I'm like, because I'm getting something else out of it more than just getting in shape. Right. And I think that's it. Right. I think that's it. And again, like I've had the same dynamic thrown at me, and I'm like, maybe I ought to raise your bar a little bit more, because if I can do it, there's nothing about, I wasn't born on Krypton. Yeah. There's not like the Earth's atmosphere works for me the way it does for you. There's nothing magic about it. It's the other side of it that I was not willing to accept. Right. I wasn't. I mean, I remember years ago, I was director of security for the Allegheny Health Network. And I went to to visit a
a contractor in Vancouver, British Columbia, like a little tour, to see how they do it. And I was like, okay, absolutely. I mean, aside from the fact that our healthcare models are totally different, it was a very similar network, multiple facilities, multiple, different geographic locations all around Vancouver, British Columbia. So I was like, okay, great. So I get to my hotel, time difference and all that, get a big, long delay in Chicago O'Hare the night before. So I wake up the next morning, and the first thing I do, I'm feeling like crap. And I'm thinking to myself, all I want to do, and I'm hungry because everything's thrown off.
Yeah.
Everything. And I'm like, okay, the A side of me is going, don't train today. Go downstairs, get a big breakfast, and wait for your pickup, and then do your thing. While I'm doing that, I'm lacing up my shoes, and I'm like, all right, hit the gym, do some kind of workout. I don't even know what they have.
Something.
But, you've been there. Okay, what's the workout of the day? Great. What do I have available to me?
Yeah.
Great. Now I take this, I model it to that, and I get a workout in. And I think sometimes too, like that leads to a point of frustration. I mean, we've been doing this for 19 years.
Yeah.
Right? And sometimes that does lead to a point of frustration. And I know, well, I would have done it, but the stars didn't all align.
Yeah.
And it wasn't a workout that was like your strong suit. If it was up to me, the A side versus B side, if it were up to me, I'd only pick workouts I'm good at. I'd only pick movements that I'm good at. But you do that, you don't get the results you should.
Yeah.
You just don't. And how easy would it have been? You close down, clean up, get out 4:30. How easy would it have been to sleep until you woke up?
Oh.
And then do it all again?
95% of the people in the business kind of did.
Yeah.
I had a lot of friends, no judgment of them, but I was like, I can't do that. Like I'm booking gigs. I'm working all day until I go to work again. So I kind of need that energy, but it was really also to myself, like it was building self-confidence that I did what I said I was going to do. And I didn't start CrossFit or working out until 40.
Get out of here.
Yeah, I didn't work out before that. All I did was like ride a bike. I was active. I was a skater back in the day. And I was sort of like naturally physically inclined, like had like a gymnast component and I could jump things and stuff. But I didn't start until 40 when I started here.
I did not know.
I didn't work out at all. I didn't do barbells. Yeah. I used to walk with dumbbells in like North Park.
Yeah.
Just, keep my arms in shape, but I didn't do anything outside of biking.
Wow.
So that was my first, like, for the first year, I didn't know the difference between a clean, a snatch. Like, I'm like, what is all this terminology? I mean, when I say I was ripe, I had no idea.
I did not know that. That's cool.
Yeah.
That is very cool. And it just as a little FYI, got a couple people downstairs about to start training.
Oh, that's cool.
So if we start to hear like bangs and booms, the building is not coming down around us.
They're putting in work.
They're putting in work. But that's, and that's very interesting because I guess I was on the other side of that equation. Yeah. I started training as, God, I was in my early teens. And I was, and I mean this is, and I keep saying this probably because I don't want to be dinged later. I mean no disrespect to anyone else. I was the proverbial fat kid in junior high. Started off, my early years skinny as can be. Skinny as can be. My mom, my grandmother, they're like, oh, honey, eat. Grow up in an Italian house, like, eat. And I was skinny. And then I remember my favorite aunt telling my mom one day, she's like, Maxine, don't worry about him. He's not, you watch. I raised 3 boys. She's like, he's not always going to be skinny. Then I went the complete other route and, got just like the chubby kid, you know, and all part of adolescence and whatnot. But what I remembered vividly was I couldn't wait to train because I had older cousins who were, my oldest cousins, rugby players, athletes, in my line, my oldest cousins were 17 years, 16 years, 13 years older than me. So I was like the baby of that generation. And, these guys, like I looked up to them. One of my cousins was a fantastic athlete, linebacker for Penn Hills High School. And this was one of those stories, honest to God, like Western Pennsylvania. This kid, going into his senior year, had his pick of D1 schools. I mean, they were lined up for him. And one of the last games of his senior year, takes a hit, knee turned around the wrong way and just wasn't, just missed his window, But I remember as a little boy, like, looking, these guys were like, my heroes. Right. And my dad was a presence, Didn't, I don't know that he ever exercised a day in his life, but, through contracting and construction and all that, he was just always fit and strong and healthy, So that's something that that's what I want to be. That's what I want to do. And largely through trial and error, I bought my first weight set with lawn mowing money, set it up in my parents' basement, that type of thing. But, looking back, time is the one thing you never get back.
Definitely don't get that
ever. Mm-hmm. So at that, think about when we came up, right? There was no internet. You wanted to learn something, it was largely magazines.
Yeah.
So Joe Weider, Muscle Magazine, originally back in the day, Muscle Magazine, Joe Weider. And that's where like the legends of bodybuilding, and they'd write articles. Well, it took me years and years to realize, conventional bodybuilding, that type of training, there's only so much. Yeah. The rest of it's variation. Mm-hmm. It's like, hey, Byron Nash tells you how to blast your biceps. Right. Well, guess what? 6 to 8 months later, hey, Mike's bicep explosion, which if you hold them both together, mine's probably a variation of yours. Yeah. But as a kid, I'm like, yeah, that's it. Well, one, I had no clue as to what I was doing. Mm-hmm. Two, I didn't know. Why? Well, because I want to be fit. Yeah. I want to be in shape. But not realizing bodybuilding is a thing unto itself. Yeah. That is what it is. There's so many, is it for sports performance? Is it for overall wellness? Is it for appearance? Mm-hmm. As a teenage kid, it's for appearance. Yeah.
It makes sense, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then I guess, you kind of evolve into that as I get to high school, start playing sports. Well, now you're like, okay, well, I'm not necessarily lifting per se. It's conditioning and sports specific. But, so I trained at an earlier age. But I didn't find CrossFit until my 40th birthday, coincidentally. Oh, well. 40th birthday. I had been stationed at the embassy in Tel Aviv 2 years prior. All right, so 38, 39. I had my 40th birthday in Tel Aviv. And then that was September. The following July 2004, I was in Baghdad, and I'm still doing the same workouts, right? And not realizing that the workouts that I was doing were all bodybuilding oriented. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, today I'm working, back and biceps. Yeah. Tomorrow I'm working chest and triceps. Never realizing that I'm like, okay, I'm doing it, but am I making gains? And what's my goal? Yeah. What gains am I making? And the one thing that I noticed my entire time in the military, you have your physical readiness tests that pop up on the calendar. And for the life of me, I don't remember if we did them on 6 months window or 12 months. But you could set your clock by this. You had your guys in the squadron. You had your cardio guys. Like these guys are the runners or the bikers. That's what they do. And then you had your weight guys. And they're the ones that are in the gym, hitting the curls and the triceps.
Yeah, they're all jacked.
Exactly. As you're getting closer and closer to the PFT, what you would start to see is the guys who were runners and bikers. Switching. Yeah, runners and bikers are getting more PT in. And the guys who are the lifters, the weight guys, they're getting more road work in because they have to take the test. Mm-hmm. Then you take the test, you pass, and you're like, okay, woohoo, I'm good for another 6 to 12 months, whatever the window.
Your regimen, yeah.
Exactly. The very next day, the weight guys are back in the gym. The other guys are out on the trails, And what I realized, and in fact, this was kind of funny, when we inquired about becoming a CrossFit affiliate, back then, and how the sport, how the community has evolved, right? When we did it, you did not even have to have your certification yet. What they asked of you, and I thought this was very interesting, very cool. What they asked was, write us an essay. Tell us what CrossFit means to you, how you found it, and what your goal is. Like that kind of thing. Yeah. So I sat down and my essay, I wrote that very thing I just told you. I was like, my time in the military was like this. Boom. What occurred to me was, we're not training to be better. we're training to pass a test, right? So real world operations, you don't know what's coming.
Yeah.
I mean, you have a mission profile, you have your package, but I don't know what's around the next corner. No plan ever works. Not the way it's written.
Yeah.
So if I'm that guy that's just want to get strong, well, that's great, right until the point that your ingress or egress plan goes to shit. And then you're like, but I'm not the guy that's supposed to go overland. I'm the guy I'm the strong guy, or vice versa. Hey, now this happened. Hey, man, Byron just broke an ankle.
Yeah.
We got to get him out of here. But I'm the fast guy. I can't lift him. So you're kind of, too bad. Fix it, right? And I didn't put it like that, but I mean, we're training to pass a test. We're not training to be the best version that we can be operationally and every other way, right? So I send that out, and I was actually on my way back to Baghdad at the time. So we did a layover. We just, for point of reference, we'd fly from Konus. At that time, when we were going into Iraq, we'd fly into Kuwait. If we were going to Afghanistan, we'd fly into, I think it was Jordan. And then we'd lay over there. Then we'd get transported to a military base. Okay. Disclaimer. This version of software that we're using on the cameras, when I throw a thumbs up, which I do sometimes, a little cartoon bubble of a thumbs up comes up on the screen.
That's kind of funny.
Whatever I did now, it released balloons and like sparklers.
If people were happy with that, it's a nice light,
exactly.
lighthearted talk.
I'm like, not sure what that means, but we didn't do it on purpose. But what was funny about the whole thing though was, so I wrote it in Kuwait. We're at this, waiting a couple days until our flight would connect us in country. We'd get transported to an airfield, military airfield, and fly in on a transport. So send it out, time differences being what they are, wake up the next morning, I get a reply from headquarters. And they're like, hey, congratulations, you are our newest affiliate, yada, yada. The only thing we ask of you, and I thought this was wild. Of course, there's an annual affiliate fee. And the only thing that you had to do, the only requirement, other than, paying your fee, the only requirement was that, like, and I don't remember how it was worded, I'm paraphrasing again, but it was like, don't ever put the community in a bad light. Like, don't embarrass the team.
Interesting.
I'm like, that is a broad parameter. But, how awesome.
Yeah.
They're like, okay, represent the community. Like, what does it mean to you? That's the standard you take forward.
Yeah.
But it's kind of, I'm not surprised. Not surprised now to hear that we both started that at like 40. You're training at 40 and so forth. But anybody who thinks it's not for them because of, if it's just not for you, so be it.
Yeah.
But if you think you're too old or you're too out of shape, hell, you know what? If you're old, deconditioned, a body type that you don't think, you're wrong. You're probably the perfect candidate for it.
I mean, and as a throwback to you, I think you maybe just turned 50, and we were at the old spot, and you were back squatting like 3+, somewhere around 300. To me, that just looked like 900 pounds, and it just looked really easy. And I was like, I want to be able to do that. Maybe not that weight, like as heavy, but I want to be in my 50s and able to move weight and have my body working that strong. And that was sort of like a turning point where, because I wasn't lifting that heavy because I still couldn't do all this stuff yet.
Right.
But I was like doing the workouts, and I didn't really get into the weight part till we got to this place where I was starting to move numbers and deadlifting and really squatting heavy and stuff. But I remember that being like, if he can do that, and it wasn't that you were doing it, was that you were doing it and it was how old you were. Yeah. That was like, just kind of opened up my eyes to the possibilities of what I could do with my body moving forward, and then I started I really got into it. I really, like, my times and my numbers were really important to me for myself. It wasn't even to beat other people. It was just like, did I give my best today? Like, I know I'm exhausted, and some of my worst days when I was like super tired, I would do the best. Yeah. But then other days when I felt kind of fresh, I maybe did okay, or maybe I was overtraining for a few months, and then I'm like, why am I still in these burpees? Everyone's done, But you start to learn a lot about yourself when you're in that space, especially being a certain age too, because you can always get better. And I train differently now than I did before.
Oh yeah.
But it's a little bit more mature almost.
Mm-hmm.
It's not so like, let's just go for it. It's like, I'm going to be very strategic about this. I know where my body is,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm going to push. I'm not going to cut corners. I'm not going to phone it in. And that has really translated into how I coach.
Right.
Too, because, we know our people.
Mm-hmm.
And, you have everyone from the full spectrum. And I just want everyone to be their best for that hour.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
super important to me. And they know, like, if you take my class at 5:30, they already know, like, we knew you were going to make us do that. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
then what? I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
Do we get up this early to just come in here and kind of do it?
Mm-hmm.
Like, 5:30 was always sort of like a different beast. I'm like, those cats are crazy. Now I'm like an early head because of it.
Right.
But if you're waking up that early, whether it's because of your schedule or because that's the time that works best for you, you have to make the most of it. I just feel like, why kind of do it? It's already hard.
For
you know
sure.
what I mean? So why are we kind of doing it? Do the best that you can. And I don't care if you're scaling, but we're going to scale accordingly so that you're still getting that stimulus. That's so important to me,
Exactly right. I love it. I love it. And you know what's funny too is like you're talking and it's sending off all these like, I remember this, I remember this, I remember this. Last Friday, the first of the 3 Service Cup workouts, Daniel.
That was
right?
a mean one.
Yeah. Now I'm up here that time of day. And I'm doing my thing and I can hear you. It's not like, obviously I'm not eavesdropping, but I'm up here working and I don't remember how you said it, but I'll tell you what, man, it choked me up a little bit. It's probably going to again too, when I had to say it again, something about the description of the workout. And I don't know how you put it exactly, but you were like, okay, it's a hero WOD. So we're going to do this. And I'm like, right on.
Yeah.
Right on, and it's impactful.
Yeah.
It really, really is. And the way you put it out was so genuine. It wasn't like, and that's all you're going to do.
Yeah.
It was so matter of fact. It was like, there is no other way. And remember, this is a hero workout, so I really love that. I dug that part of it. I thought that was very cool.
That's important to me, and I think even if the people complain, you have your people who are like, I'm like, you already know I'm still going to.
Yeah.
I'm going to support you, but
duly noted.
You know what I mean? Like, that's what it is. Because
right.
You come to my class, and that's sort of the style.
Yeah.
But you're going to walk away feeling so much better knowing
right.
that you gave your all. And
right.
if we're doing it to honor these people, that's all we're asking. We're not asking you to push 275. That's not everybody
right.
can do that. But what is your version of 275?
Yeah.
Today,
Well, and a couple other little offshoots, like when you referenced the bringing the best out of the people, out of our athletes, and adhering to the intended stimulus. All right, so that brings up an interesting point. A while back, well, forever, and I can't say forever, because forever is a mighty long time, and I'm here to tell you.
Yeah, that's
right?
Prince came back.
Prince. Anyway, love the guy. He's like Prince.
He's the one.
But anyhow, over the years, we've followed the original CrossFit Matrix that they put out at the L1.
Yeah.
And we were like diehards on it. That's it. The only caveat was because of our model, we're closed on Sundays, always have been. So 3 on, 1 off, 3 on, 1 off doesn't really work.
Yeah.
So that quickly adapted to a lot of our members would go 3 on, 1 off, 2 on, 1 off. Which, and you've been with us for most of this, Thursdays were always the wild card.
Yeah.
From time to time, we would make Thursday maintaining the scheduled class times, but it was an open gym.
Yeah.
So, if you missed something that you want to make up, you can do that. If you want to work a skill, if you want to work a power lift, an Olympic lift, whatever, it's your time, and the coach will be here to help you out. Then I thought sometimes it got a little bit chaotic.
Yeah.
And not in a bad way, but almost we had some people come in and like, new members.
Yeah.
New members, and they're like, what's happening? Well, it's, as we said, it's your time. You can choose. Then all of a sudden you realize that, at least from a business model, our opinion was we're giving people too much choice. Maybe our veteran athletes get it and they understand it, but someone who's new, they're more like, I don't get what's happening right now. So we changed that up a bit, and I don't believe there was anything wrong with that matrix at all. I mean, it wouldn't have been so successful a model if there was, But I think we started when Jennifer and Blake and Emily Obi, when they all took a hand in programming. When they all took a hand in programming, one of the things that was really when we evolved into the, okay, we're going to hit a warm up, then we're going to do a strength component, and then we're going to do a Metcon. Mm-hmm. I mean, unless the Metcon's long, and then you would eliminate the strength piece for that day, like maybe the Filthy 50 comes to mind. Murph, certainly you're not going to do a strength piece before you do Murph. But so we did all that. And, again, you learn as you go, right? One of the things that I can look back on and say the detractor from that tended to be the warm-up. Because then you're like, okay, we're doing the programming, but we're not really programming. We just didn't go that extra step.
The warm-up. Everyone's warm-ups were different.
Right, right. And I'll tell you this, I was probably the most flagrant offender. I would come in and I would look at the group and I'd be like, okay, everyone in here has like been with us for a while. Like they know what they're doing. And I believe they did.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, okay, everyone, I'm giving like the posture. I don't know what you did over the weekend. I don't know, what you need to loosen up right now. All right, guys, let's take about 10 minutes. Let's get loosened up.
Yeah.
I mean, I might start them out with a run or a bike or a row. Hey, guys, let's get loosened up. And all my, like looking back, I'm like, that was one of the dumbest things I ever did.
A lot of people need guidance in that space. And I realized that when I first started coaching, I was like researching, like, if I knew what the workout was, which if I was coaching, I did, but it was like, what moves are going to make sense for what that workout's going to be for them to warm up? Like, are they jumping? We got to get those hip flexors together. Or are they, is your heart rate going to be up? Well, I don't want the first time for you to experience that to be in the workout.
Right.
So I was like testing it on myself. I'm up at night, like researching things. And then I would do a lot of the warm up with them. And that was before I had the L2, which seems to be how things are anyway. So the programming that we do now, that we follow the app and everything, that was when I did the L2, it was like mind blown. I was super excited about. I remember what stood out was the lady put a timeline 0 to 60. And she's like, from here to this minute, you should be saying this. From this minute to the third minute, it should be here. From 3 to 7, it should be that. And it was so condensed and it was tight. And there were probably 30 plus people in here. And she had control over, and this warm-up was intense. I'm like, what's this workout going to be if this is what the warm-ups, and she's keeping everyone together and like shoulders back. And, so just having that sort of detailed, condensed way of going about it really helped me figure out how to warm people up to get them ready so they could be the most successful. Right.
And I think too, that's such an incredible, like I think with the old meme, it's like, how do you know if somebody does CrossFit? Because it's all they ever talk about.
Yeah.
I don't mean it like this, but I think when you and I get together and we compare notes, right? What always fascinates me is the L1. There's a lot of knowledge, very, very well put together. And again, we go back far enough that the L1s were, the same knowledge being passed, but the frequency was maybe once every few months, somewhere in the country. So if you wanted your L1, you had to look what's on the horizon. Is it close enough? Can you travel to it? And then you go. Jen and I, probably within the first 6 months that we were open, there was an L1 in Boston, at CrossFit Boston.
Yeah.
So we register for that. I'm home between deployments. We fly up, we get a hotel not too far, boom, we get there for the L1. Fantastic. What they did at that time, and this even carried over to like a year later when we hosted our first L1, what they would do is they'd put the pin in the map, like it's at CrossFit Boston. Then they would invite other CrossFitters who've been in the community from different areas. They would be your training cadre, right? And we had some really, really good instructors. TJ Cooper came up from CrossFit East, Jacksonville, Florida. Keith Whitstein, he was with he was out of New York, so he attended. These guys were some of the trainers, fantastic. The only potential downside was they could be different people every time, right? So I guess from the back end, from the CrossFit headquarters end, it's like, okay, where are we going and who's there? Greg Odmanson, right, CrossFit legend. He was one of, I guess, what they would call now like one of the flow masters, right? So I remember like he took us through like an organized warm-up. And then he's like, okay, and I don't remember, I couldn't tell you if this was Saturday or Sunday, but he was like, okay, he's like, so to continue, he's like, we're going to do the warm-up on the run. He's like, everybody outside. So out we go. And we start to run around the city of Boston. Now think about all of this, right? One, we're excited to be there. Two, it's a variation, I think, at that point of like fear of the unknown.
Yeah.
Don't know where we are. Don't know where we're going. Therefore, as we're passing these landmarks, I'm like, how much further are we going? Like, but every so often he'd pick a spot, like let's say a little park. Yeah. And we'd pull over it, not pull over, but run into the park. All right, circle up. Okay. Bottom to bottom squats. Yeah. And he's, got us on his watch and we're cranking out some squats. Get back on the road. We run a little bit further. Yeah. Overall, it probably wasn't as far as I thought it was. Yeah. But you're like, oh man, this is crazy. We did back then, at your L1, did you do Fran?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
You probably did, because that's how far back, that's how far back you go.
Yeah, the teaching part was upstairs and all the workout was downstairs.
Right, right. And this is, again, there's always those guys, military or whatever, CrossFit, well, what I went through, and I don't mean it like that. And I understand how things change. I do, right? When we went through Fran, 21, 15, and 9, right? Pull-ups and thrusters. Yeah. That was one of the workouts that we did. Yeah. They've since changed that to, I want to say it's burpees and thrusters now, right? It's similar. Oh, yeah. Listen, don't get me wrong. I mean, it's not. But I think, too, every once in a while you'll hear somebody throw a dart at it, and, oh, they don't do Fran anymore. I'm like, okay, switch out with me. Yeah. I think I'd rather do Fran, right? 21, 15, and 9 or whatever. It might not even, maybe it's like sets of reps, but it is burpees and thrusters. And I'm like, oh, God. So again, people have their favorite flavor, and they're going to stay on that channel, so to speak. But I remember it vividly in a sense that, and I don't mean by no means, I don't mean it was hit and miss. You just didn't always have the same crew available to you based on where you were. Well, then this thing evolved. When we hosted in the next year, so we got our L1s in Boston, then I was in Afghanistan, came back, got back on a Wednesday. We hosted an L1 at our original location. So I get back on Wednesday. They're like, hey, the crew from headquarters is coming in on Thursday. They want to do video. They want to do background, so that they could use it on the site. Yeah. Awesome. So, and you probably remember these days, like I would come back from deployments and I have like long hair and a beard, and first thing I did Thursday morning, I went and got my hair cut and I shaved my beard, right? So we roll into the gym and it was the most fun. Tony Budding, was it Tony? Savon, I think they were the only two that showed up Thursday to start the process, so that Friday we met them at the gym bright and early, and we're doing all this, B-roll and some video and things like that for the background. And then Friday night, same protocol, coaches started arriving, and we had who came in that weekend? We had CrossFit Boston, their whole crew showed up. CrossFit New York City, Keith Whitstein and his guys. CrossFit Reston. So Jeff and Maggie Tincture came up with some of their people from Virginia. I want to say Doug Chapman. Yeah, Doug sure did. Doug Chapman was at Hyperfit out of Ann Arbor, Michigan. So they just came into Pittsburgh, had an incredible L1. And this was still kind of cool, from my perspective. It's like little known and it doesn't really matter in the big scheme of things. But what CrossFit would do, and they still do, but quite more back then because of let's face it, 2007, like we hadn't even hit the halftime in the global war on terror. right?
Okay.
So what they would do was they would scholarship L1s to service members, a lot of them from the special operations community. And I do remember vividly where it was like no big deal, no fanfare.
Yeah.
But as they would brief media, they would be like, okay, those guys over there, they're not in any frames. You know, they're not in video, they're not in photographs.
Right.
And you're like, yeah, right on. You know, that was kind of a side note that pretty much no. You want water? You
I
good?
have a water. Yeah, it's just like allergies.
I got you.
Just little allergies, that's all.
But it was awesome. You know, it was awesome. It was something that like the majority of people didn't have any idea that it was going on because of so much electricity and energy, you know, in
That's
the room.
great.
It was wild. But, you know, we just carried that through. And interestingly enough, now this was an L1, right? So just put it in perspective. Jennifer and I were included as instructors because we already got our L1s in Boston the year before, or however many months that was from 2006 to 2007. But so we're part of the trainers, okay? So now what was happening was like you did at your L1, every group was the class was broken up into groups.
Yep. Circles.
Exactly. So it's like, okay, I'm with so many others in this group, and Jen's with so many others coaching that, training that group, okay? There was another tier. Jeff Tincher, for example, was in charge of my group, okay? So we're in charge of the students getting their L1. Jeff is, so in other words, we're evaluating these attendees to get their L1.
He's evaluating you.
He's evaluating us to get our L2. Headquarters staff is evaluating him to get his L3.
Oh, wow.
All at the same time.
That's a lot.
Right? All at the same time. And this was Greg Glassman, Nicole Carroll, Dave Castro,
All the OGs.
Tony Budding, Savon. I mean, yeah, like all the OGs. And I don't remember who all else was, but again, like, so Keith Whitstein, Neil Thompson from Boston, Doug Chapman, and just so wild, so wild. Jeff and Maggie Tincher, you know, like I said, and as this thing evolved, and what was funny too, just on a personal note, it was a grind because, you know, flying back on Wednesday, still just jet lagged.
Yeah.
So Thursday we're running around getting, you name it, folding chairs, tables, getting everything ready, getting the space in order. What was very, very cool though was there were so many trainers set up, and as you can imagine, when you're only doing these so many times every year or every few months on a calendar, there were a lot of attendees. So they brought in a lot of trainers, right? The student to instructor ratio was good. So at a local restaurant near our first location, we hosted a trainer's dinner. They came in, we had a briefing. Everybody goes off to the restaurant. We had a big trainer's dinner at Carnivores in Oakmont. It's a neighborhood place, pretty cool. Like we took over like half of it, reserved that for the thing. Roll in early Saturday morning. One of my teammates, and this is just how funny it is when you're like a little kid inside, you're in your 40s, but you're still a little kid, right? One of my dear friends and teammates was flying in from Afghanistan the day after me. So he would be 2 days. He'd be arriving on Friday. And I'm like, hey, man. And the girlfriend of another teammate was flying in. So those two met at the airport. I was like, listen, I'll come get you. And Ken's like, aren't you going to have a lot to do? He's like, we'll take a car. I was like, no, I'm coming to get you. I wouldn't have it any other way. We're so busy Friday. I'm like, there's no way I'm going to get out of here, right? So I call a car service. And again, this is like no Uber. It's all before that, I call the car service, have them at the gate at the time, pick them up and bring them to the gym. And so we had, house guests. He and I are both just wrung out because we're still on Afghanistan time. And we're at the gym, 0:30 to open up because everybody's coming in to get this thing started. So we participate. We're being evaluated. We're teaching. Sunday, same thing. Boom. Well, now it comes time that like the L2 candidates, we're being debriefed by the L3 candidates who observed us all weekend. Oh, man. And I'll never forget, Jeff Tinch, I'm watching everybody get called. Jeff's like, Mike, come on over. So I go over, and the first thing out of his mouth, he goes, okay, he's like, so it has to be hard when you're being evaluated and you're hosting. And I don't know why the first thought that crossed my mind was, well, I'll get it next time. You know, like I'm thinking like that's his way of saying like, hey, you just didn't do it, you know? And probably due to fatigue, I'm thinking like that, a little sluggish. And he's like, but you did it. He's like, really good job all the way around. You had some good talking points, you know, things to work on, things you did well, things you need to. But he's like, overall, good job, you know, good job. Got your L2. It's like, hey, super. Like that's, you know, at that time, that's like a big deal. Yeah. You know, it's at any time, it's a big deal. But the way they did that, I thought was very, very cool. You know, just an interesting part of the process. But looking back, and I say this a lot, like when you guys got yours, the difference between then and now is wild, because I think what's happened is they have refined it to such a point,
tight.
Right?
It's real tight.
And it's no longer, well, who's available. Well, you know what? I can't say that. I'm not on the back, on the inside anymore like that, but it is a matter of who's available geographically. Yeah. But you're you're drawing from the same pool, the same cadre of instructors who are like, you remember for quite a while, Denise used to come here quite a bit. Now she's in a different capacity with HQ, but those, you know, Amy from King of Prussia, Amy Lyons from CrossFit King of Prussia, she comes here quite a bit. And it's really, really neat. Joe DeGain, he was on this rotation for quite a while. And it's so, I don't say comforting. It's not like a hot soup, but it's neat. It's just neat to have the familiar faces and that, you know, return like engagement, you know. But that curriculum is so, like you said, it's so tight. It's so well delivered, so well presented. It's a pleasure to watch it, you know, even though like if I don't have to take it because I'm current or whatever, you know, you can't leave here without being energized, even after you host it. Yeah, you know, it's palpable.
I remember my biggest fear about everything was like programming. I'm like, I don't understand quite yet how do I program workouts, and am I putting the right things in there, or this, that, and the other. But between like L1 and L2 and kind of having that condensed thing, and then I like had a job doing boot camp classes where it wasn't at a CrossFit gym, and it was like climbers, like people who were used to climbing. And one of the interview questions was like, well, how will you convince climbers to do these CrossFit things? Because we didn't really have the same amount of equipment in the space, and I had to improvise and like create, you know. So from what I knew in the space where I was comfortable, where I knew, you know, everyone kind of knows what we're doing to a certain degree, and then taking it out of that and then trying to improvise when you have minimal equipment. And how do you create something that everyone gets a benefit across the board? The L2 helped shape that and tighten it up where I could think a little faster. And even just like, how do you adapt something if someone can't jump on a 30-inch box? You know, things like that. So I think that training really helped me think about timing, and then the delivery of like, how do you control a class and keep it on task and all those things. So it's been really helpful. For sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, the evolution of the courses, you know, the evolution of the L1. And again, like I'll drive this into the ground. No means am I saying, well, it's so much better now. Oh, I mean, like if by better, like more efficient, more streamlined. Like there is absolutely no doubt. But even in the beginning, I think one of the things that fascinated me was being able to hear Greg deliver it himself. You know, and again, I mean, not just, you know, due to just growth, there comes a point where you're like, well, that's not possible anymore. You know, it's just not possible. But to pass that knowledge, you know, from the flow masters to the, and again, they'll send, depending on how big the class is. Usually for an L2, they'll send 2 people because the L2s are smaller. You know, more focused, more concentrated. But, you know, from the newest member, like an intern that they'll send because they're being evaluated. Or will they be part of the cadre? That curriculum, I say, you know, and I'm biased. I throw that out right up front. I am biased. I think our curriculum is second to none. Absolutely. You know, and it's funny too, because I take things maybe too personally sometimes, but you know, how many, if you think back how many attacks have come directly to CrossFit by people in the fitness space. Those moves, some of those moves, I love this part. Well, the thing I don't like about CrossFit is some of those movements are dangerous if you do them wrong. Dissect that.
Yeah, I mean,
no kidding.
I mean,
if you do them wrong.
Yeah, I mean, anything you do wrong, you walk off the. I mean, I cracked my knuckles doing a 30-inch box jump demo, and it was. I knew I could clear the box, and so I was so focused on, like, guys, if you're going to go for 30, and it was just one of those things where I was, like, demoing how, use the momentum in the arms. I was a little close, cracked my knuckles, didn't even get to jump. And this was last week. So anything can happen,
right.
Like, I'm experienced, and I can jump the box, and I still hit my knuckles.
And but now it's kind of funny. Think about that. See? I told you, CrossFit's dangerous.
Yeah.
Right. Well, I was on a training contract for the Navy from 2010 to 2012, and I would travel. The curriculum was like the course rather was 3 weeks, and each of 2 teams would do 2 of the 3 weeks. So, like, when I first started there, my team was 2nd and 3rd week. Our sister team was 1st and 3rd week. Right, and then I switched out. Our team took 1st and 3rd and whatever. But the point being, we get down there, we move to a new part of the base, and they're like, hey, we've got this warehouse and we've got all this CrossFit equipment coming in. Would you set it up for us? I was like, are you kidding me? Yeah, I'll set it up for you. So I did. And I didn't order it, right? And again, it was good equipment. It was bumper plates and kettlebells, what you would expect. And I don't remember the brand name, and this is not a criticism, but you remember for a while, someone had the idea to put out an adjustable box, metal frame, flat top.
No, I never saw that.
Yeah, you didn't miss anything. You did not miss anything. Well, it's not really practical, I thought, because, obviously the top part is heavier than the bottom part. So to adjust it, to make it easier, I'd flip it over. And then I don't remember if they were like the push, like you have on like some of our portable squat racks. You unscrew it, then you pull it, right? It was something like that, or like a pin, like a safety kind of thing. Don't remember. But the point being, it was a pain, unless it were like 2 of you. And then you go, okay, now you got to loosen all 4, lift it to your height, pin them back. So I would be in there by myself. I'd turn it upside down. I'd pin it. Bottom line is this. We were prepping for the open. As always, we would do the open workouts at our box on Saturday. So during the week, let's say they released it on Thursday. Yeah. I'm like, all right, I'm going to get to the gym early Friday morning. I'm going to practice. I do mini rounds just to get the flow. Yeah. Right. So this particular workout was a barbell movement and box jumps. Couldn't tell you any more than I don't remember. Like you said, cracked your knuckles on the box, right? So I'm doing the box jumps. And again, it was higher. So as I'm loading, picture this. I launch with everything I've got. I catch this pinky finger under the top of the box because it's an open frame underneath. I jump and I catch it as I'm going up. So it goes from here, touches my wrist here. I land on the box and I'm like, I'm in tears, right? So first thing, I grab it, I pull it, and I'm like, oh my God. Lessons learned. Bad idea, but what fascinated me after that and during the healing process, how weak my right side, my grip was. Like how much grip strength is in that finger. A lot. It was insane. I mean, everything you could possibly do, barbell work, pull-ups, kettlebells, this might as well not have been there. So I'm like, okay, do I tape it? What's most conducive, But yeah, little nuances like, well, let's not do that again.
Yeah, and I wasn't being anything. I was in pain. I was like, holy crap, that really hurt. But I wasn't embarrassed because anything could happen. Yeah. And normally, if I were doing a 30-inch and launch like that, I mean, I've never done that before. It's just maybe I was just a little off and tired or whatever. But I was like, guys, if you let's say you are hitting this 30. And it's starting to look wonky. I'm gonna ask you to take the box down out of safety. Yeah. Just little adjustments like that where maybe it's 5 rounds. Well, maybe the first 3 you hit the 30, but if it starts to look a little suspect, let's clean it up, but then don't take as long of a break. Just keep working.
Yeah.
Things like that, you know?
Yeah.
Because some people will try to push through when it's like, maybe you should like stop for a second, you know, or some people will eat the clock up and get a water and, you know, walk around. And I'm like,
right.
No, why don't you look at the clock and say, I'm going to rest for 10 seconds. And that's all you get.
Mm-hmm.
And you get back to work. And like, try to condense that for yourself so that you get the most out of it, you know, for where you're at. So that's been my like overarching goal as a coach of like, what's your mindset today? You know, what are you willing to do? Something's hurting, we don't do it. You know, you can't do this thing today, or you don't have that skill yet, then we're going to really work on that other thing. If it's can't do pull-ups and you're doing ring rows, you're going to do some really good ring rows today. You know what I mean? Like, don't waste your own time and walk away proud from what you gave to it. You know?
Yeah, and I think that's, you know, kind of circles right back around. And what's just fascinating to me is it's always been out there. Just who recognizes it first, who capitalizes on it first, who rather utilizes it first. Like you said, you know, what's been put out at the L2, and now as you know, back to the reference of how we did our programming. I loved what we put out because I thought Emily did a fantastic job. Fantastic. Again, you know, the warm-ups, we still left it up to the individual coach. Well, now you've got, at any given time, 12 to 14 coaches. You know, you could have 12 to 14 different warm-ups during the course of a week. So when we went to the first time it was offered up, the CrossFit affiliate programming, we took one look at it and we're like, whoa, like this is our model. Like,
it's modeled after the L2. That's
exactly
it, you know?
Exactly. To the point, to the minute. So now we're looking at it, and it was a no-brainer for us. It was a no-brainer for Jen and I. I was like, okay, look, let's give this a try, because now you not only have appetizer, main course, and dessert, right? You have that, and you have your timetable to manage it right from the L2.
Yeah.
Well, why do they teach it at the L2? So we learn it, so we can utilize it. Now it's put out for you in a very user-friendly format.
Yeah.
And like you said, you know, when the programming comes out for the week, you can look at it, you can study it, and you're ready to go.
Yeah.
You know, and time management.
Yeah.
Absolute time management, even to the point that you referenced this earlier in the conversation about, okay, not only do we scale, right, the potential from the prescribed to the intermediate to the beginner, but scale in conjunction with the intended stimulus. Bring those two together.
Yeah.
Now, and even if you added like a nuance of like a time cap, right? Now all of a sudden there is no reason, and the benefit I think is evident. Like, okay, no, I'm gonna go RX no matter what. Super duper. Because if the hour is over and the next class is rolling in, and you're still on round 4 out of a 5-round, 6-round WOD.
You made the wrong choice.
You made the wrong choice. You didn't come anywhere near the intended stimulus. Now, I'll never say it was a waste of time.
Yeah.
But you didn't maximize that time. You didn't maximize that workout, right? Shoot for the intended stimulus. And I think there's always enough opportunity in the warm-up to make sure that you realize, like, all right, my volume is too high. Or that volume is too high. I've got to modify that.
Yeah.
Even if it's like, I made reference, I think it was yesterday, to one of the athletes. I was like, when you look at that board and you see RX, intermediate, and beginner, because sometimes I think people are like creatures of habit, and you look at it and you go, okay, it's either column A, column B, or column C. I'm like, yeah, but also look at it like a spreadsheet that you could move cells.
I tell people that all the time.
Right?
I'm like, no one's doing beginner today. Sorry. But what you can do is you could take the volume of what they're asking for in RX, but maybe this is your weak spot with the run, you know? So let's combine those so that you're still like operating at a high level for where you're at today.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think too, you know, you've done it. And again, I don't mean like, well, you've done it and I've done it. Anybody could do it. I don't mean it like that necessarily. Yeah. But I do mean at our, and 40 is not, listen, now that I'm 60, I would love to be 40 again.
Yeah, I bet.
But at that time, mean, I started CrossFit at 40.
Yeah.
You started at 40.
Mm-hmm.
You can do it.
Mm-hmm.
You can absolutely do it. And what's funny too, I appreciate this, and I mean what I'm about to say sincerely. When you made reference to, like, you know, I was 50 and we're at the old gym and you're watching me, you know, move the weights I was moving. I got to tell you, right back at you, because I've watched, you know, through social media from your posts being here, and I'm watching you moving these weights, and I'm like, right on, right on. Now, if it was 20-year-old Byron, I'd be like, right on.
Yeah.
But not for me.
Yeah.
You know, I think when you throw it out like that, though, that's the essence of the community. You know, like, you kind of feed off of one another's energy. You get motivation.
Yeah.
You know, even, and I've said this a lot. Do you remember old blast from the past? You remember Chris Nolan?
Yes.
So, you know, he and his wife came to train with us in early years, and I'll never forget. He was like, okay. He said, you know, really going to give this a try. I've seen it online, very interested. And he was like, look, I have I believe he was like IT at CMU. And he's like, I sit all day. He's like, I don't really, you know, I'm not active. I need to get back at it. I need to. And watching him progress, he and his wife both, was a pleasure. You know, it was an absolute pleasure. And he had shared this with me once. I thought was really neat. He said, you know, my wife has tried several different programs over the years. And he was like, you know, this is the only one she ever stuck with. And he's like, it's because of your wife. It's because of Jennifer. Like, what the energy that she brings to the classes, you know. And I've always said this, and I don't want to get like hate mail from Peloton or anything like that, but I think it's a great concept. I think anything is better than not training. I think they might have hit the market. And there's a lot of similar. I think Lululemon even makes one, like some kind of magic mirror on the wall or something. And it's better than not training at all. But I think as far as training overall, and I'm the biggest gadget nerd. I don't know if you are or not, but if something's electronic, if it's a gadget, I got to see it. That's great. But I also look at it like this, you know, unless you can actually give me feedback. And I don't mean, come on, let's go. That's not feedback.
That's encouragement.
Right. And it's great. You know, it's wonderful. But, you know, I look at something like that, and I do believe that brand hit a niche when it was most needed. And it's like, okay, well, people can't go out. You know, now we're all at home, and that's super. But no one will ever convince me that it comes close to the energy you feel when you're in a space. Man, I don't think I can do another rep. Come on, you got this, almost there. I could record that myself, and I could listen to it on, you know, like run to cadence, you know, whatever. It's not that, you know. It's the vibe, it's the feel, it's the sound. You know, I mean, even doing the open. I mean, how many times, you know, over the years, you and I are like, hey, what are we doing today? You know, we're looking at it like, we're doing this, you know. But just to be able, even if we're not in the same heats, if we are in the same heats, even just being able to look over at a glance, and you're like, right, you know, like, we're still moving, we're still in it. There is something palpable there, you know. So, no, I mean, I taking all things the way they've evolved, because it's a process. It's like been the evolution of CrossFit, you know. And one of the things, and I know, you know, within the community, there's always, you know, like, who's on what side of this or that. But I do recall not too long ago, I mean, look at the games. Who ever thought the first year of the games, was it 2007 maybe? I think it was. I was deployed, and they're announced, like, they're coming up, right? And it was literally, man, it was a gathering at Dave Castro's family ranch, you know. And I remember looking at it on the calendar, and I'm like, oh my God, that is so much fun. Because back then, a lot of those folks we knew, because there weren't that many affiliates. Sure. And I think maybe some of the ones we didn't know direct contact would be the West Coast people, you know. But I was like, oh my God, that'd be so much fun. And at the time, you know, life was different, right? Our kids were little. Michael, hell, he was like 2 years old, maybe, you know. But at that time, I was like, okay, so we had here in Pittsburgh 2 sets of grandparents, a set of great-grandparents, all still mobile, agile, ready to go. Take the kids. I mean, our plan was, I'm going to register. Maybe Jen's going to register, but at a minimum, she'll fly out there and meet me. I'll fly directly there. We're going. And then I got extended, so I didn't make it. Gotcha. And I say this with all humility. That would have been my only chance to make it to the games. Right, because that's when you had to register.
Yeah,
like you register on time, you just show up.
Yeah.
Once and that first games, if you recall, was like the basics of CrossFit. Mm-hmm. There was a trail run. Yeah. There was the total, the CrossFit total, and then the third event was a hopper workout, where they pulled rep schemes and movements out of a hopper, boom, and it was wild. Yeah. That would have been like, I don't know, like the invention of the light bulb sitting next to Thomas Edison when it happened. Yeah. You know? So that was very, very cool the way that came out. But then the way it evolved from the from those days to the one and only year, I think it was 2010, when we did the sectionals. Yeah. Right? Fun, but, again, kind of separate, And then 2011, I think the first year of the Open, and then every year since then. And I do recall before Greg left, he had already kind of started a movement back, for lack of a better way to say it. And in his own words, and I remember this, he was like, "Look, the games aren't going anywhere. We're not doing away with them. We are just really kind of re-energizing, re-emphasizing a return to why we started CrossFit in the first place. It is for everybody, and I think, have we gotten tremendous exposure from the games? Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. One of my favorite CrossFit Pittsburgh stories is the Pancheks. Dave Panchek brought his Scott, Shay, well, all of them at one point, but as I recall the first visit, Scott was, I want to say a freshman in college, his younger sister, and then the twins. And the twins were little boys. I mean, they were small, and brings them in for a workout, and we're like, hey, all right, good group, great family. And then a little bit, they brought the older brother at one time, and this and that, Steve, and wild to see that evolution. Yeah. And then Scott gets to the games like boom, 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 year after year, world-class athlete. Then, Spencer and Saxon, you're like, holy smokes, amazing, absolutely amazing. So, the games will always be, and this was funny too. I guess when you're that old, like, hey, Grandpa, tell me whatever war it was you lived through, But we had gone, the year we did sectionals, we go to regionals. Blake, one of our coach number one, is Jen and I, and then Blake was our first actual coach that was a original member. Yeah. So we both competed at sectionals. He advanced to regionals, and this was funny too, just as like nostalgia, right? I was supposed to go back on deployment. I would not be able to compete, but I was training with him the weeks leading up to it. And I was like, look, we'd come in between classes, just he and Jen and I, and, she's putting the programming together. And I really looked at it for his sake, or his purposes rather. I looked at it like I was his sparring partner. I'm like, dude, I'm not competing, but I'm going to train right alongside you because I think that's going to give you a little bit more, of a push. So long story short, my father had passed away in 2009. Coming up on sectionals in 2010, my mom's health had taken a turn, so I extended my time off. Well, when I extended, the first thing I did was registered. So the next day we get into train. He's like, I saw you registered. I said, yeah, change of plans. I am going to be here. Yeah. And I think the disservice that I did was training with him. I was training with the mindset of a sparring partner. Like, it's not my fight. I just got to put out to get him to push harder. It's not my fight. I'm not competing. Yeah. I think they took the top 60 men and women. I was 61.
Oh, wow.
I'm like, that stung. That stung a little bit.
Yeah.
You know,
So
like
close.
one more rep, you know, a little bit faster, but it was still, it was incredible, you know. And so we get to the regionals. It was at a farm. It was all outdoor. Thank God for the weather, right? All outdoor, Logan, Ohio, for like we were Pennsylvania, Delaware, and Maryland, and our section, and whatever Virginia, and you know, so those sections came together for our region. We rented a place out in Logan, Ohio for the weekend. We get there. So as we're driving in, I can only imagine this must have been like Woodstock or something like that for fitness. You know, like we drive in and there's this huge field for parking, and then everybody kind of had their little villages set up, you know, with their folding chairs and tents and whatnot.
Yeah.
So who do we walk by but the crew from CrossFit Reston, right? Jeff Tincher, Maggie. And as they're like, hey, yeah, we saw you guys pull up, you know, good to see you, you know, blah, blah, blah. And we're making small talk. And real matter of fact, Jeff says, hey, guys, I'd like to introduce you to someone. He was a kid. He goes, he just started training with us. He's in high school, I think. This is Ben Smith. And I'm like, hey, nice to meet you. I'm like, nice to meet you, Ben. Ben goes on to win the games, you know. That same competition, Doug Chapman from Hyperfit was the head judge. Jennifer was always one of the judges wherever, you know, we would go. So they do the coaches briefing, they do the athletes briefing, everything's great. There's a cross-country run where you could see that the course was laid out. So we're at the starting line, right? And there's really no judges for a cross-country run.
Yeah.
It's like you start here, you end there.
Yeah.
What one point, it was almost, if not a perfect figure eight, there was a crossover, right? Then at one point, the runners would be at the base of this pretty steep, muddy hill. They'd pick up sandbags, you know, men's weight on the left, women's on the right. They'd pick them up, carry them to the top of the hill, drop them, and continue the run, all right? So at one point, Doug, Jen, and I wasn't judging, but I was hanging out with them during the cross country. Doug, Jen, and I are standing there, and he's like, hey, you know what? He's like, if we head through these trees, we can get to the next phase, and we could see them take the hill. Super. So we do. Then he's like, hey, if we continue this way, we'll see them as they come out of the tree line to the clearing, you know, yada, yada. So we do. We get out there, and we're standing together making small talk, and Doug's a good dude, right? All of a sudden, this attractive female athlete comes smoking by. Real matter of fact, Doug looks at us and he goes, who knew my girl could run? And we're like, yeah, right on. It's someone from his gym. Super. It's Julie Fouché. So, you know what I mean? Like, this is when, who knew my girl could run? Like, she is so new to the sport at the time. Ben was so new to the sport, he wasn't even old enough to compete at the time. And these athletes go on to literally, Scott, his brothers, you know,
for themselves.
Right, become like, you know, CrossFit athletes, games caliber, who are like, everybody knows those names. If you're in the community, you know who they are. So to have been a part of it long enough to see that evolve, I kind of put that on like one cubby of the CrossFit, you know, cubby unit, right? Then the other one is like coaches, athletes that developed here with us that have become coaches, you know. And I remember like when we, you know, it's not like, well, I don't know. It's not that we're not selective, but you know, we don't give the L1s and L2s those scholarships. We don't give them out like they're Skittles either. No. You know, like we don't go, man, we really need another coach. How about, you know, it was the energy that you brought. You know, like watching you train, watching the enthusiasm. And then I'll tell you, like the impression you made on me, again, listening to your schedule. And you're like, man, it closed at 4, you know, you're in here getting after it at 9, especially at that old location. Yeah. Holy smoke. Listen, you know what? We probably all deserve like a pat on the back for training in that building. You know? Well,
I just assumed that's what it was. Like, I was like, it's just kind of gritty and you just work hard. You know, like that kind of is very aligned with me. And, you know, I didn't know, you know.
Listen.
That was an accident that I showed up there. I bartended the night before. You guys did the Saturday morning kind of like little tryout thing and made a pact with 2 other coworkers because some guy was walking around trying to like give discounts to people in the area, the businesses in the area. It was a different gym. And I was like, you guys want to try this? And I'm like, I'll do it if you will. And I'm like, it's tomorrow. We all close. They're like, yeah, man, we can do this. I'm like, well, we're not going to stay after and have beers. We got to get out of here. I'm the only one who showed up. And I walked in, and you were coaching that group. Like, the regular class was going on. There was a small one. And you're like, can I help you? I was like, yeah, I was kind of looking for some friends here. And I was like, I don't see them, though. I'm literally about to back out of the garage. I'm like, oh, my bad, man. And you're like, no, come on in. I was like, no, it's good. Here I am suffering through this, like, workout. And I'm like, I thought I was in shape. And then I realized I wasn't fit. Yeah. Like, there was a difference. Like, I could still lift things. And I was in shape, but I wasn't fit. And then I came back the next week by myself. And then I did one more week. I said, this seems like something you would have to commit to. And there was a lady, there was like pull-ups in there, and I could do pull-ups, but I couldn't. I had never done like 50 pull-ups, you know, or 3 rounds of however many pull-ups. And she was much older than me, and she was banging these pull-ups out, and I was so inspired by her that I'm like, I got to try this, you know. And then that's when I signed up. Yeah. That's how it was. Just like I tried out the little trial thing 3 weeks in a row, and then I just committed.
Well, it's kind of wild too, because I do believe, and getting back to Chris, you know, how that whole thing brought up, one of the things he dropped on me, and I was like, man, I never thought about that. Never thought about it. So it kind of made me feel good that I didn't think about it. But he goes, you know, one of the things I respect most about the way you guys do business, or you do your thing. I was like, what's that? And he said, you know, and oh my God, the first website we ever had, I want to say it was like a variation of Yahoo, something or other. Okay. It was horrible, but it was industry at the time. Like you do it yourself, you know. Yeah. It was like almost like a blog. Like you would have to change the entire page to elicit a change, or eliminate this, paste this. So very, very primitive. But once we started to get a little bit more on social media, and this kind of surprised me. But then in hindsight, it didn't. It was right out there all the time, but you know, I didn't key on it. He was like, you know what impresses me the most? He's like, you guys you post pictures of everyone. Yeah. And I'm like,
instead of just the upper tier.
You know, what was crazy though was I was like, okay. And he goes, no, I mean, he's like, if you check out some of the other spots, some of the other locations, even regular Globo gyms, those aren't even their members. Those are stock photos. You know, he's like, you post pictures of like the pretty people. He's like, you don't. You post everybody. And I was like, wow. And I tell you, I was a little bit taken aback by it, because I was like, you know, not sure what to do with that. I mean, like, I guess I was pleased that I was like, well, it didn't even occur not to. Yeah. It was never a thing, because like, these are our people. This is our CrossFit Pittsburgh community. Yeah. And I guess had I thought about it long term, yeah, it would be kind of cool. And you know, it happened anyway. Because what happens is, as you look back through the digital archives over and over and over, you see pictures of members when they're like, oh my God, look at that. You know, that's when they first started. You know, look at them now, like that type of thing. But I think, you know, one of my other favorite stories, you know, that's why, like, one of the things I really want to do with this podcast is bring the coaches in like this, one at a time, and hear their story. Yeah. You know, and how like we affected, you know, I don't know, symbiotically, right? Like, you know, we feed off each other's energy, you know. Rachel Mitlow, I mean, I will never forget, her husband came in, talked to Jen, and this was how clear cut it was, the intent. He's like, hey, my wife's got a high school reunion in 2 months. She wants to get in shape. I found this online, you know, CrossFit, found your gym. He's like, got to tell you though, once that reunion's over, you'll probably never see her again. It was something like that, almost to the word. Jen's like, hey, that's fine. Okay, fast forward. Not only did she achieve her short-term goals, you know, getting ready for the reunion, she became a member to do that. She stayed with us beyond that. She became one of our coaches, you know, attended her L1, still here to this day. I mean, like, those are the stories that you're just like, okay, so 12 years, 13, 14, 15, 19. It's, you know, that was the old, you know, CrossFit, hey, drink the Kool-Aid. Yeah. I'm like, well, if that's what it is, so be it.
I think part of it, too, is like, it's not like a comfortable thing. That's like the wrong word, but like, I've had other gyms try to pull me, and they're like, I don't roll that way. You know what I mean? Like, I have a loyalty to certain situations because, honestly, I wouldn't even been a coach if it weren't for you guys. I wasn't looking to coach. I wasn't
minding my own business.
Yeah, I remember how it happened. I took Jen's class the most, and it was one of those things where I was working a lot, so I wasn't sure what the schedule was, but I knew there was a L1 coming up on the weekend. I just didn't want to show up if, the gym's locked down for that. And I was like, hey, there's that L1 this weekend. You guys we're closed, right? She's like, why? Did you want to, are you interested in coaching? I was like, oh, no. I just didn't want to show up looking stupid, and she was like, oh my God, you'd be a great coach. And I was like, yeah, no, I'm like almost backing up from her. Like, no, that is not what I was asking. And she's like, let me text Mike. And I'm like, no, not at all. And then that's how that came about. It was just me not making sure that I wasn't showing up when there was an L1.
Right.
And she had a light bulb go on. And then I took the L1, I was really nervous about it. And then I got it. And it was, at that time, a big confidence booster because my job had burned up. I was kind of going through money troubles and things were really stressful. It was the one little thing that I did that was way outside of my comfort zone that all right, I did that. And then I didn't even coach because I had people ask me to help them work out all the time. I'm like, I'm not really qualified, guys. Come over to my house and we can do some stuff, but I'm not a coach. Then I got the L1 and just came to class like a regular, member. And then I think Jen asked me to cover a class one time. I was super nervous because, again, out of context, these are the people I'm used to working out with.
Right.
I've never had to lead them in anything. And then I'm like, how do you lead a class if this person can do muscle ups, but you can't do that yet? You know what I mean? How do you find the sweet spot where you're coaching across the board? And then that's when I really started getting into the idea of it. And I remember I didn't want to bartend anymore. I was super over it. Just pushing through it. And there's this whole thing about whatever you speak, kind of becomes your reality and how you view yourself. And I was always telling people, if I met someone, they'd be like, oh, what's your name, Byron? No. What do you do? Oh, I bartend. I would always say that. So I was getting all the results that come with being a bartender. Whether you're drinking too much or you're up too late or, all the things, the people you date. And then one time I was working and they were like, oh, you're really in good shape. You're a trainer. I was like, yeah, I'm a personal trainer. Said it, never trained anybody before. Just kind of put that identity into the universe. Got my first client. And then she was a hairdresser. She got in shape. And they were like, girl, what's up with your legs? Where'd that happen? And they were like, oh, there's this guy, Byron. I got the L2 after that. I got the L2 in 2021. By
no kidding.
Yeah, that was March of 2021. By then, I had 15 clients. And I would have never have gone that direction. I would have never seen it. And now it's one of my favorite things that I do because I didn't realize how much I liked helping people find out their greatness. That's sort of my overarching thing. Oh, you got more in you. There's only 40 seconds left. Push. And then they do it and then they feel great. And I would have never seen that had Jen not opened that little. It was a very small window for that to happen. And that's what has me here now.
Well, that's cool. That's very cool because I do remember when Jen was like, hey, and what's funny too, and this is a thing that I will always respect about CrossFit, and over the years too, I think it's, it's no secret. I mean, CrossFit is no stranger to its own controversies. Yeah. And its detractors, and it's disturbing. And I know you and I have sometimes very, very sporadic, impromptu, philosophical conversations, and I think that is one thing that is disappointing. It's a trend right now that I see a lot on YouTube particularly, and maybe it's the fallout from the global war on terror, withdrawal from Afghanistan, whatever you want to call it, but there are former military service members who have all gone on as entrepreneurs and written books and done their own things, and man, kudos kudos to you, because the I think the saddest thing to do would be at least me personally, man, I love old stories, but I never want to be that guy who's still wearing let's say his practice jersey from his high school football team, and he's standing on the sidelines at every football game yelling, when I was here. Well, you're not anymore, Chief. Maybe you want to reminisce over a coffee or a beer, right on, I'll do that with you. But you live there, then it's bitter and it's angry and it's not going anywhere, But what the disturbing trend I'm noticing is, you've got all of these folks who have served their country, have gone on and opened their own businesses or their own, taken on new endeavors. Mm-hmm. Great. Here's my 2 cents. We get 100 views on this. We get 1 view on this. So be it.
Yeah.
Right? But what's amazing to me is some of these individuals who've gone on and done well, if you don't like their content, don't click the play button, right? But now there's like a backlash, and it's disturbing. There's a backlash where there are these little, for lack of a better word, these little fucking minions are coming out, and they're discrediting, like systematically discrediting these individuals. Mm. And I'm like, okay, Chief, here's the deal. 1, I don't know who you are. I may not know, let's say I may not know Jocko, personally, by first degree. But I'll tell you, one of the things that I respect is, as I listen to some of his work, his old work, they start talking, and every once in a while they'll drop names, usually first names, right? And they attended this memorial service, and I'm like, right on, man. That guy was a teammate of mine. I worked with him. And what it does, for me is I'm like, okay, now, you speak to a guy's character, was he part of his command or did he know him personally? We knew him personally. How did he know him? In what context? Now we're on the same page. Yeah. One of the guys that he referred to once, and it kind of chokes me up, but I still have a fucking voicemail of his on my phone that I can't get rid of. Yeah. Because on the voicemail, he's talking to me, and he's like, hey, Rock. And he says something, and he starts laughing. And Scotty had this laugh. It didn't matter where you were or what was happening. When he starts laughing, everybody starts laughing because it was contagious, So to me, I'm like, okay, man, hang on. I'm not going to get all silly about this, but it's like, you don't talk shit about one of my friends, Now, again, by proxy, but I guess I'm getting sidetracked. But the whole point is, what is it about human nature in some people that's like, man, I like Byron, but you know what? Man, he's getting a little too successful. Now I don't. What the hell is wrong with you?
That's just a reflection of them not being successful. That's just mirroring. Usually we find something with somebody else that like kind of irks us. It might actually naturally irk you, but there's probably something inside that's related that's why we're seeking it out. We can see it. Plus, jealousy is just a natural kind of human thing.
Yeah, well, I think that's it. I do. And again,
if someone's winning, then that means it's just making you look at where you're losing.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like that, I've dealt with that before, where people are like, that guy's really arrogant. I'm like, I'm not arrogant, but like as a, I talk to my son about it. I'm like, when we're growing up, they tell us as kids we can do anything we want, and we're spectacular, and you get a star, and just do your best, and all these things, and you start believing in yourself. And then you become a teenager into adulthood, and then you're like feeling yourself, and they're like, you're arrogant, you need to shrink it and be small.
Yeah.
It's like, wait, I thought I was supposed to feel good about myself.
Yeah.
And so it's like a weird thing. They're like, feel good, but don't feel too good.
Right.
Do well, don't do better than me.
Don't stand out. You'll draw attention.
Don't do better than me. You know what I mean? Like, and so I think that's just like human nature and like an insecurity thing too, and attention.
Right. And I think the crazy part of it is too, and this was, again, out of the mouths of babes, right? When I had the idea to do this podcast, you obviously, you were one of the first people I went to, and I was like, hey man, let me run this by you. Yeah. In a way, maybe subconsciously, I was hoping you'd say no. Yeah, no, don't do it. You don't want to run with the pack, that type of thing. But, you didn't. And I guess the conscious part of me realized, like, no, man, this is the guy to talk to, because get after it. What you got a story to tell.
Yeah.
You have a story, put it out there. Interestingly enough, I told my wife, and you know Jen very well. I told her, and as you can imagine, the first thing she said, she's like, oh my God, what are you going to say? I'm like, what am I going to say? I'm going to tell the most embarrassing stories I can think of. I'm like, what? It's about the community. As long as this thing focuses and doesn't stray from its intended path, I want to talk about CrossFit Pittsburgh as an entity, as a community, as and I mean this in the best positive way, as a tribe. Because I believe too, when you look at certain, oftentimes a group is a tribe, and if you don't have common interests, you don't gravitate towards it. You certainly don't stay with it, And look at how diverse. I mean, my God, you have, older people, younger people, every size, shape, demographic, political leaning,
level,
right?
Physical level,
yeah.
all that.
And I mean, some of the most interesting. We had a lady here. I don't know. Do you remember Rafaela? In a million years, I've never known any. She custom make, like hand makes custom dolls.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Right?
That's it, yeah.
And the first time I saw, like on social media, or was it, I guess it was her, what's it called? Like when you post to social media, the picture that comes up, like the, you know, of, so whatever that is, like your avatar, or lack of a better word, I first see a message from her, and I can't tell what it is because I'm looking at it on my phone and it's smaller. Well, then I see it on my laptop and I'm like, what in the world is that? I expand on the picture. And it is this handmade, hand-painted, hand-crafted doll dressed in like a handmade outfit. And I'm like, and she'll do different lines like in the series. And these were like almost like a fairy tale, like, you know, with like the pixie ears and the, you know, the shapes and things like that. And I said to Jen, I was like, hey, check, did you? She's like, oh my God, you didn't know that? She's like, yeah, evidently she is like quite famous. You know, that's her thing. Like she custom, she's like, look at her website. Wild. I mean, that to me is like fascinating because it's so different, you know? And I think sometimes too, you know, whether it's, you know, military, government service, a workplace, sometimes I think there's a tendency to keep the blinders on and, you know, well, I don't know anybody who doesn't do what I do. You know, now here we all do CrossFit, but the backgrounds, like the community that we have is fascinating. It's absolutely fascinating. And I do love the fact how, you know, no matter, everybody's kind of, I don't know, it's cliched to say it's all welcoming, it's supportive, but if you think about that, I don't ever recall, you know, and I think the reason, I'm kind of answering my own question, I think the reason I don't recall it is because the folks who are not inclusive, welcoming, and you know, have like that kind of heart, they don't last. You know, it's just, for whatever reason, no, it's just not for me. Great, you're probably right. You know, so now it's just been, I mean, you know, the last 19 years have been wild. You know, the community's gone through a lot of change. And like I say, right now, you know, again, you know, social media, right? I'm on YouTube, I'm doing my thing, and I see this video. It's like, CrossFit's for sale. I'm like, okay. So I guess this is what happens. And it's why are we surprised? You know, now we'll see what happens. I mean, that's the unknown.
It's still business at the end of the day. So any of that's very possible. You know what I mean? Like, it's just the evolution of things.
Exactly right. So, you know, again, I mean, we're still here. You know, let's see what happens, you know, 19 years from now. You know, maybe, well, I don't know. Yeah, we'll still be here. I'm not going to. We'll be older.
I mean, you work out.
We'll be older and gray.
You know?
We'll be older and gray, and we'll do this again, and we'll reference it. But now, man, I mean, we've been at this for a while, and I'm sure you've, oh my gosh, coming up on 2 hours. But brother, it's a pleasure talking with you. Thanks for being here, man. I appreciate it. All right. Guys, check it out. Video available on YouTube and audio available on Spotify and Apple. All right? Out.